Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Rachel Rubin, urologist and sexual medicine specialist in the Washington, D.C. area, and welcome back to another episode of Sex Matters. This one's an interesting one for you and kind of shocking, actually. Some of you may have read a story earlier this year in the New York Times about the alarming rise among young people of choking or strangulation during sex. I spoke recently with Dr. Debby Herbenick about this concerning and violent trend. Dr. Herbenick is a well-known sexuality researcher and professor at the Indiana University School of Public Health. Welcome, Dr. Herbenick, and tell us all about it.
Sure. This is, I think, some of the most important research that I've done. And so I've been studying sexual behaviors and trends for about 14 years in terms of like the U.S. nationally representative studies that we do. And over time, we noticed a trend in increasing prevalence of rough sex practices. Now, there's always been a lot of sexual diversity in the world, right, throughout historical time and place. But the main trend that we're really focusing on in recent years that I think is important for everyone in medicine to know about is this rapid increase, and it's a really, really big increase in what people call sexual choking, even though it's a form of strangulation. And the increase is mostly seen in teenagers and young adults. And so we've done U.S. nationally representative surveys as well as college campus representative surveys. And we find that consistently across 4 campus representative surveys that 64% of women report having been choked during sex ever. And around 1 in 3 women, 18 to 24 throughout the whole country, report having been choked just their most recent time that they had sexual activity with another person. So they call it choking, but because it involves usually one hand, sometimes 2 hands, or a forearm, or an object like a belt or a cord to tie around the neck, it is technically strangulation because it's external pressure to the neck to reduce or stop airflow or blood flow.
And these numbers are staggering, right? So everyone listening is taking care of people who are being strangled as a form of sexual pleasure. And so what does this mean from a safety perspective? And as doctors who are working these patients up for migraines and other health problems, what is the research showing?
Yes, well, so we certainly are seeing people report recurrent headaches, ringing in the ears. I think there are things we've just barely scratched the surface on. I mean, I think that those of us working in this space, really believe that, for example, anybody coming in with unexplained stroke, for example, under age 50, you might consider some imaging to see if they have a dissection. And so we are hearing about people who, when you really probe and find out if they've had pressure on the neck, they may report that indeed that they have. So we have to be thinking about neurological symptoms. We know that they're experiencing them and at pretty high rates. For people who are engaging in these practices, they should know about the health risks. We find that most don't. They may have heard that if it's really, really intense or sort of high pressure, that in rare cases people can die. But most have never heard of anything in between. So they're not connecting necessarily their voice hoarseness to an experience of being choked, or the recurrent headaches that they're getting, or the sensitivity to light. So we need to be paying attention to neurological symptoms. Most physicians I speak with at conferences say that where they feel like they can step into this conversation is through anticipatory guidance and just letting their patients know that, you may have heard about this trend and a lot of people aren't talking about the health consequences, and I want to share with you some information. Not coming at it from a place of shame or judgment, but providing some information so that they actually get some medical facts about this that really could be life-saving.
I mean, it's really, I see such a big gap in my medical training where I was told to say, hey, in the vice section, do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you do drugs? Do you have sex? Men, women, or both? And that's it. Right. And then maybe, don't get an STD, use birth control, thinking about herpes, thinking about syphilis, thinking about, gonorrhea and chlamydia and those types of things. We weren't really trained ever to how to talk to patients about what kind of sex are you having and how do I talk to you in a way that is open-minded, but also safety conscious, and and this concept of safe sex is now more than wear a condom or use birth control, but this idea of rough sex practices and how to really talk to now teenagers, maybe our pediatricians even should be talking about this. So where do we start in terms of how to bring up these conversations and in what level of detail?
We find that some young people are already being asked about some impacts that their body might show for them. So they may be, it may be that their provider notices some bruising and or different marks on their body from other types of rough sex practices like hitting and so on and spanking. And so that could be an entry point. Now, choking is far more prevalent than slapping. So if you're seeing some marks on the body, then it's also possibly a good place to ask about other practices they might be engaging in, especially higher risk ones like choking or strangulation. And so again, offering some information and even sometimes just saying, look, I'm not here to shame or judge you. I just really want you to have some information about this and, giving them an opportunity to ask questions too. We have found that almost nobody talks with their nurse or doctor, even if they have symptoms from being choked or strangled during sex. So in our data, we find that just 1% of women with choking related symptoms and 7% of men, and far fewer trans and non-binary young people are reporting talking with a nurse or doctor. Mostly because they say it didn't seem like a big deal. The symptoms got better quickly. Sometimes they're afraid of being shamed for their sexual behavior. And that's why they say they don't talk with somebody. So I think, they need some type of open door. Anticipatory guidance is a way forward. I think not everyone's comfortable, directly asking, understandably, if someone's engaging in this, but at least letting people know that you've heard of this behavior, providing some medical facts can give us a step forward with creating these conversations.
And can you tell us, where is this research going in terms of next steps, other things that you're looking at, and what are you excited about?
Well, I'm excited because a collaborator and colleague, Dr. Kei Kawada, he and I did some work together that he led a couple years ago. He's a neuroscientist, so looking at potential cumulative effects on the brain. So we're taking some of that research into its next steps. We're also doing more focused studies on other health consequences and hopefully finding out how we can also test different messages out that are educational and get people to learn more fact-based information about this and then see if it's effective in prevention as well.
To me, it sounds like a public health campaign is really needed about, how to get the word out there of the health consequences of these activities. And, we're really not often asking people, something in my clinic that I try to keep open-ended is, tell me what sex looks like, right? What does it look like? And what do you want it to look like? Because I see a lot of people with problems, but I don't go in, if they don't sort of bring it to me, I don't necessarily bring it up to them until I heard your lecture. And my mind said, oh my gosh, I'm not even asking the right questions. And so are you hopeful that there'll be more public health messaging out there?
I am. Years ago when the child adolescent choking game became a thing, the CDC issued, reports about this and issued warnings to parents. And this is a far, far higher prevalence than that ever was. And so I would love to see organizations like the CDC. I would love to see medical groups getting involved and educating their members and doing, big statements because this is, really impacting a huge generation of especially girls and women when it happens in sex between women and men. The choking is mostly happening to the girls and women. It's also prevalent among sexual minority individuals as well. But we are talking about this whole generation of young women and what's happening to their bodies and their brain health. So we really need to step into this conversation.
And when we don't talk about sex, and again, there are very few of us who are sexual medicine trained physicians. There are very few of us who feel confident and comfortable talking about sexual health issues, but people are getting hurt. People are really having consequences to these behaviors because of our lack of education, knowledge, and even discussions around it. So thank you for doing this research, because had you not done this research, we wouldn't have found things like 64% of people are engaging in these types of activities. That is not rare. And so thank you for doing this research. For everyone, how can they find you or follow you or look more into this?
Yeah, I'm on social media as @Debby Herbenick, and I'm also on our website, sexualhealth.indiana.edu.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.